Hello and welcome to another episode of The Board. I'm Gavin Coughlin, an Agile coach here at Boost.
I'm Kirsten Donaldson.
And I'm Paul Llewellyn, also an Agile coach here at Boost.
Yep. Today we're going to be talking about a few things. We're going to be talking about some training that we did recently, not specifically about that training, but just sort of the benefits that we got out of it and why we enjoy doing those training days. And possibly if you guys are doing training, I would like to hear from you, to hear about some of your experiences doing it. We're also going to be going through our Agile Health Checklist. It's a checklist that we drew up where you can go in and I suppose gauge how well people are using the process. And we've seen a few of these around the internet, and we did our own one. We're also going to be talking about a blog post from the Scrum Alliance about the 4 things you need to know about Scrum, and a Tom Howlett blog post about a team that left Scrum and ended up returning to Scrum.
Okay,
Cool.
Shall we start with what we've been doing recently in regards to training? On Monday this week, we trained 40 people at our office, which was quite an experience. I think, with 40 people, there's some challenges in corralling them, isn't there? Particularly as we run all these activities during training.
That's right, and I think we were, I think if any more than that, we would have needed a PA system.
Would have been out of control,
or some kind of megaphone, whatever they're called, those kind of loud halo.
It was quite hoarse by the end of it.
Yeah.
But it was really great training people. This was a group that is already using Scrum, or a lot of them are using Scrum, and they just wanted to get everybody on the same page, I suppose. And we've had other training days in the past with people who've never used Scrum at all. And for me, I really love doing these training days because they're pretty high energizing. We really value questions throughout the day as well, and you do get a lot of really interesting conversations that carry on throughout the day. And for me, that's one of the biggest benefits. So we always allow a lot of padding to make sure that we have time for those questions throughout the day.
And I think, because we don't focus, well, we do have some theory, but we do focus on getting people out of their chairs and actually doing Scrum.
Yes.
It does foster some great conversations, because as soon as they start to do it, they can see how it fits with their current.
That's right, yeah.
And that's probably one of the biggest feedbacks we get, actually, is people wanting to know more about how it could fit with the way that they do things, and how they fits with what they actually do, because not everyone builds software.
That's right, although these particular people did. What I quite liked about the training we did on Monday was the fact that their entire company was there. I think it was a great chance for them not only to sit down and learn about something at the same time, but also just a day out the office with their colleagues, something that's not so serious as day-to-day work.
That's right.
You could see that they felt quite relaxed and, wandering about at lunchtime and interacting with each other, and they seemed to enjoy each other's company, and it's really great to get people away from the office and doing that.
Exactly, and it's interesting for me running these courses for people who are using Scrum, but might have decided that some bits aren't that important for them because they might be a little bit too tricky or difficult to implement. And as we're going through the course, these topics obviously come up, and it might be, we don't have a defined product owner. And
for example.
For example, and you talked about the importance of having a defined product owner, and that creates a lot of interesting conversations, and it's through those conversations you really help these teams learn why that's actually a really important thing, and not something you can drop just because it seems a little bit too difficult to start.
It's really interesting to encourage people to consider the art of possible. So fostering the opening up a conversation rather than the shutting down a conversation. So rather than someone saying, for example, no one has the time or experience to be product owner in our company, to ask the right questions to bring out what might be possible for their role. It's quite fun.
And of course they're very satisfying as well, because hopefully at the end of the day everybody's pretty energized and has a lot of interesting ideas to bring back and hopefully put into place. With these courses that we run, it's also fun for me because they're always different. We always try and cater them for specific teams and their situation, but in the spirit of Agile, we get a lot of feedback at the end, and we adjust the courses every single time we do them according to feedback. So it's never. It's also a little bit terrifying because that every single time we do a course has to be different. But that's what keeps it fresh and interesting, and keeps it fresh for us. So we're not just standing up at the front of the room and going through the same thing every single time.
Yeah, exactly. Repeating the same slides, and it just becomes monotonous for everyone involved.
And it could never be the same every time, because every single company has a unique standpoint of where they're coming from, where
Exactly.
they are on their agile journey.
Yeah.
It was a Jeff Patton course, Passionate Product Ownership, which initially made me see the error of our ways, because we started doing a lot of workshops and we went through slides, and that's how we've seen a lot of people do it.
Yeah.
And I know when I've been at maybe 2-day courses where it's largely just going through slides, very hard to keep engaged for 2 days, and you just start feeling like you want to fall asleep, and a lot of information gets lost. But Jeff, even though he had slides that you could refer to afterwards, he sketched out a lot of most of the concepts, actually, if not the entire thing. And that inspired me to try to do the same thing here. And I just find that much more engaging if you are sketching concepts out and talking as you're doing it. And again, that's different each time you do it.
It actually comes off as a lot more confident as well, because often if you're turning around reading slides, it's a bit disjointed and stilted.
It's just not engaging for people
either.
I like to think of our slides like user stories. I know some of them, like we've got not just enough on there to elicit the conversation that we need to have, but we don't have all the detail, and that's the beauty. Is we often go off our we won't stick to our slides. We'll often start. We're kind of free. What do you call it in freestyling? That's it. We're freestyling.
Yes.
Our training, because people have got different. Every company that we deal with has different questions, and we'll tailor it as much as possible, and also try and keep it on track as well, so that they get what they need to know.
I like to think that there'll be a prompt to thinking afterwards. That if I'm anything to go by, I never ever look at workbooks again after training. So I guess there must be some people who refer back though.
Yeah,
I like that term actually, agile freestyler. I might add that.
You're going to do a song around it.
Yeah, get rid of the agile coach term and call myself an agile freestyler instead.
That makes you sound like a bit of a loose cannon. But
yeah,
that's right. Yes.
Wrapping everything out.
Agile freestyler.
Yeah. Interesting.
And one thing that we did for these people, and we started doing for some people, and I mentioned it earlier on, is the Agile Health Checklist. We quite often get asked to go into companies and asked to help them with their agile process, and we go in and we have a look at what they're doing, and we might observe meetings and observe how they're working together as a team. And we decided to create a checklist that we can give to people, or else we can go in and use the checklist ourselves, and it's just to tick off some of the fundamentals, I suppose. When we first did a draft of this checklist, it was really, really long, got into all the nitty-gritty and all the detailed bits. I still think that's a valuable thing to keep. We wanted to pare it right down to the basics.
Yeah, the bare essentials. Yeah.
For example, if you go in and observe a retrospective, you can have this and tick off what they're doing and what they're not doing. And there's quite a few Scrum checklists and Agile checklists available online, but we really wanted to do our own from our own perspective.
Our own experiences, exactly.
It's a great thing to do before training, because it helps us tailor the training to that company if we can see the areas where they need the most help.
I do think I don't think the best or the greatest benefit is gained if you just give people the checklist to fill in either. I think it's quite important to observe, because people, for a start, some of those things are written, it's all written down, it's open to interpretation. That's the problem with writing. And the other thing is that they often it's good to get a snapshot of what they're currently doing right now, and people might think, well, we did that in the past, so I'll tick the box.
Yeah, exactly. I think these are good just touch points, and like I said, they're very useful for us to go in and actually use. And the way we structured our one, like I said, there are a lot of them out there, and if anybody's out there and thinks this would be useful, you could do your own. But we structured them, we went through the meetings first of all, so we got a checklist for the stand-up. You won't be able to see this, but a checklist for the stand-up, and for sprint planning, sprint review, sprint retrospective, and we also did a checklist for the backlog refining meeting, and then smaller checklists for the roles, how the sprints are being run, and what artifacts you have in place.
I think the value in this is the notes section quite often, because that's the narrative that supports the checklist items.
That's right.
Without the notes, it doesn't have much context.
Like doctor's notes.
The
observations.
And
patient seems nervous.
And this is, I'll give you an example of just one of the checklists from one of the areas.
Please do.
I'm going to them about it right now, just to see what you can see. So sprint retrospective, we give a little blurb about the retrospective and what it's you want to achieve within your perspective. And we just have 3 points for the checklist here. Is the team discussing what went well and what didn't go well? Are the team collaborating to come up with actions so they can complete during the next sprint to improve their process? And is every team member participating? So that's it, and that's, like I said, just touch points, and there's room for notes there. And if I was to mentally go through a checklist, there'd be a lot more things in there that I'd be thinking about myself to see. But these are the basics of.
But the point is that this is to be done during observation. So there's going to be a lot of stuff that, as you say, you mentally pick up from observing.
Yes.
That will come out in the notes generally.
That's right, and we also put some stuff along the bottom. We have attendees, Scrum Master team, product owner. The inputs that you might want before each meeting, the objectives that you want to get from each meeting, like 1 to 3 goals or experiments, and some of the pitfalls that you can commonly find in some meetings. For example, the pitfalls in the retrospective we have here, it's not an open and honest atmosphere, the retrospectives have become repetitive and stale, measurable goals, we usually use SMART goals, have not been formed within the retrospective. So that's that's the checklist, and like I said, there's quite a lot of them online. If anybody has any ideas about other things you could put into a checklist, what might be valuable if you're going into a company to see how Agile is working for them, just let us know.
To hear them.
Yeah.
That kind of leads us quite neatly into the next topic we were going to discuss, which is about the importance of the PO, the product owner role. And I do wonder, like, because this particular company that we're talking to or coaching at the moment have similar issues to this. It's so similar to other cases that we've seen where the product owners are overseas in a different time zone, and it makes it, that their customers are actually overseas in a different time zone, and so it makes it very difficult to communicate, collaborate with the product owner role, and just some ways this team are really looking for ways that they can mitigate those the risks that are involved with not collaborating with your product owner, which are basically the basic risk is that you won't get what the product owner wants.
Yes, exactly.
You won't encompass their vision or.
Well, that's true, and it's one thing that comes up in so all the training we do. It's the one thing that's causing a barrier for people who are using Scrum is the product owner, and whether it's lack of availability or lack of empowerment to actually make decisions, or even lack of vision of the project and what the outcomes really are. And that's one thing that comes up again and again, and it's such an important point. And I know we've talked about product owners on this show before, but it's just really imperative that you do get a product owner and get support for a product owner, that they know it's not just one person who bears the brunt of all responsibilities.
It's fairly pivotal, isn't it, to the success of the project.
It seems to me if you don't have a product owner, you don't really have a project.
No, you don't. You have a group of experts who can build something. You've got no real idea what they should be building.
It's like a rudderless ship, isn't it?
It's right.
And that's one thing that Jeff Patton again did talk about during his course. It's that one thing that's not talked about, say, in the Scrum Guide, or I think it's the people behind the product owner, which is something that really needs to be discussed, and people need to be aware of that they do have whether it's called a product ownership team, whatever you want to call it, people who are behind that product owner to help them with decisions, to help them with having the empowerment to make decisions, and obviously to guide them with prioritizing stories and coming up with stories and features and acceptance criteria. And that's a whole separate team from the Scrum team itself. But
that's right, the product management product management team.
Yes.
And it's interesting because they have to offer the authority to the product owner, or at least have a consensus of opinion that they present to the Scrum team, with no changing priorities, without different members of that product management team pulling the Scrum team in different directions. They have to be consistent in their approach with and I think that's the key thing. And then of course we do see the product owner role as a very difficult role, and we do understand that people have to work as a team to fulfill the product owner role. And even if you've just got one product owner, you still have a support team, i.e. the subject matter experts and the business analyst type roles who support and write stories and help the product owner write stories and so on. So it's just but it's about getting that single vision, if you like. That
I mean, it's not just the sort of people behind them at the organisation. It's also getting the team behind them and the Scrum Master or Agile coach behind that person as well. Because
absolutely,
it's our responsibility. I'm speaking from Bruce's point of view as a supplier, to support that person and make sure that they have what they need from us as well.
And you've definitely got to foster that between the team and the product owner. They're all part of it.
It's not a given at the start of a project, is it? It is something that needs to be worked on, and taken care of.
And that they are the team. Well, I know we have development team as one role in Scrum, but the whole team is the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the development team. Yeah. So they have to foster that collective ownership.
Yeah, absolutely.
True.
Another thing that we came across, Ruka here Boots came across it. She's always reading about Agile stuff.
She is.
And we came up, she found a Scrum Alliance post about 4 things you need to know about Scrum.
Yeah.
What were they?
Those things were Scrum Works.
Yeah.
Was one of them. The real bullet point things that they have. Yeah. I'll read them here as well. Scrum isn't only about software.
Yeah.
It can be used across different industries. Scrum is a business approach, and Scrum aligns very closely with customer needs. And I just got us thinking about if people asked us about Scrum, what's 3 things, because there's only 3 of us, we decided to come up with one thing each. What we thought you need to know about Scrum.
Yeah.
So Paul.
Scrum is an empirical process, i.e. it allows you to inspect and adapt regularly and improve, constant improvement.
Yeah.
It's very succinct.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say one that has often been said before, but quite important. It's not a silver bullet. Scrum requires work, but the payoff is worth it.
And mine is that Scrum empowers teams. So it gives the responsibility to the people that are actually doing the work to make their own decisions and self-organize, and it really, I think that leads to better product and better morale of people as well.
Absolutely.
And just reflecting on your silver bullet and not a silver bullet, the interesting thing about Scrum is the transparency that it kind of just creates, and that's why people find it hard. Is because they suddenly all of these little warts and wrinkles are in their organisation are exposed.
I think it's not just that. I think sometimes people are daunted by what they describe as the amount of meetings. I see it as a small amount of meetings compared to what we used to have. But because they're all scheduled in advance, it kind of freaks people out.
Yeah, exactly.
As opposed to having twice the number of meetings that just sort of crop up randomly during a week,
Yeah, and
I think that can be a little daunting for people.
I can't believe that people say, how many hours are we going to spend in meetings? And we tell them the rough time boxes for an iteration, but those we never hit those time boxes once the team gets into a.
Well, you always go over them.
No, we always go under them.
Right.
But
no, they are quite long. So
yeah, they are long.
Relatively speaking.
And then I just I'm always amazed by people's kind of memory lapses.
Yeah.
That they don't remember the number of meetings that we used to sit in making
that is
decisions.
The transparency, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because when you're working in that sort of more traditional way, no one sits down and says you're going to be put into 10 random meetings this week. They just crop up, don't they? And then you forget about them.
And they don't have really fixed outcomes as well a lot of the time, and they don't have fixed times. So
that's just people thinking that that's the other school of thought, is that meetings aren't productive, and of course all of our meetings are very productive.
Because people are so used to sitting in meetings that are not productive, they just assume that they're going to continue to be sitting in meetings that are not productive.
Yeah, that's right.
But until you immerse yourself in it, you don't realise how that's going to be.
Yeah.
You remember the first?
I remember the first business meeting I ever went to in Ireland. I was quite excited because, like I said, it was my first meeting. So I thought it was like chatting with the bigwigs, but sat around and talked for about 3 hours about nothing.
Yeah.
So I finished it, went back to my desk. I thought, what was that? That was just a bunch of people who really wanted to hear their own voice.
Absolutely.
And talked in circles, and the same points came up again, and nothing was actually decided upon. I thought, what a massive waste of time.
I've had the exact same experience over and over again, particularly in a large company I worked for, to the point where I just started making excuses to leave meetings early.
Yeah.
So I was like, it was a waste of time when I could be at my desk doing some work.
Well, I was fairly lucky. I got to go. I worked for Intel Corporation when I was at university. So I spent 18 months with them approximately while I was a student and as an intern. And they indoctrinated me into their way of working. The first 2 weeks that you spend with Intel Corp is they teach you. You go to school basically, and they teach you how to run meetings. They teach you how to hold successful meetings. They teach you how to do to run successful one-on-one meetings and so on. They have to
Sounds great.
how to run presentations, and so on. So they're pretty smart. I mean, it did feel like an indoctrination.
They had that recognition.
Yeah.
That this is something where it's still time. It's not just sitting around having some tea and biscuits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that's a big problem actually. Bringing biscuits into a meeting, people only come because there's going to be biscuits.
I wouldn't mind if that was brought back into.
Really? Okay.
I know at Boost, when I first joined Boost, we have a quite clear way of doing things, and we do have a form of indoctrination ourselves into the way that we work. It's true, and we know what works, and we.
I mean, with the introduction of Agile to Boost, though, it makes it a lot easier and more uniform, doesn't it?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Than the previous. Obviously, we had ideas. Not that I was here, but as I understand it, we had ideas about the way we should do things, but they weren't as formalised.
No, they weren't, but they were.
And talking about meetings, somebody was asking me about retrospectives recently, and they're having problems with retrospectives. So, and why have retrospectives? Shouldn't you be able to just bring up stuff all the time? And absolutely, yes, you should be able to. You should be able to, but this gives an actual time, set aside time where that can be done, that can be discussed. Because if it's just a random, you can talk about issues as they come up that might not happen, or people mightn't have a way of dealing with it.
It might be that not the whole team might not be there at that time. Yeah. So someone might have something valuable to add, but they're not present during the conversation.
You can bring up stuff at any point you want, but there's always a retrospective for that as well. It's just there for the team.
That's right, and setting us in you're making time for it, which kind of segues nicely into the next or our final topic, which is about a return to Scrum, and the fact that this team in this blog post they shared a very similar experience to one of the teams that we've got here had, that they felt like they didn't need Scrum any longer. They'd used Scrum as their training wheels. They understood the Agile principles, and they wanted to move away from Scrum. They felt like it was holding them back because of the rituals and the meetings and so on. They felt like they were wasting time when they could just be.
Interesting the way he described their departure from Scrum, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or was it a free-for-all party? I think.
That kind of ended up with, instead of a team working on a product, resulted in pairs working on stories or features. Yeah. And so you got
this really disjointed way of working.
Yeah, that's right. So it became far more individualistic. They didn't have a common goal. They didn't, that's one of the key reasons that I think they reintroduced Scrum, was so that they had that sprint goal, so that the team had a common theme that they were working towards at each iteration.
Yeah, I mean, with this particular blog post, they went through this period that he describes as a all-out free-for-all party, and he didn't know how things were getting into the backlog or why they were there,
where stories were coming
and
from,
things were siloed. But he doesn't, he's not negative about what happened. It's like a sort of evolution. They've gone through it, they've tried something else, and they've come back around again, which I think is brave. It's a good thing to do, to experience it and then come back and realise the benefits if you wish to go back to Scrum or something else.
Well, it's interesting. I was talking to somebody last week from a large organisation, and they're a bit of an Agile champion within the organisation, but there's a lot of resistance to bring, say, Scrum in, for example. And but they were working on a large project, and somebody was looking after it, didn't want to use Scrum, but found that the team was getting snowed down by just having too much work to do. There's too much to comprehend. There was no light at the end of the tunnel. So gave them a smaller goal to achieve within 2 weeks, and the team was much more positive about it and achieved that goal within the 2 weeks. So I decided to do that, and thought, why haven't I been doing this for the last 4 years?
Yeah,
and then breaking this work down and giving teams goals every 2 weeks instead of one massive goal that seems unattainable.
So was this Scrum by stealth?
Well, obviously, the guys, the Agile champions, said, "Oh, this sounds a little bit like it could be Scrum."
The thing with those small those large unattainable goals is that the team often starts like, you know, there's a level of activity, but they're often thinking, well, maybe this idea would work, maybe we could do this, or maybe if we built it like this, we could do this, and they go off and do all this experimentation, which some of it just goes down dead ends, and but they're trying to overcomplicate things. We've talked. I ran a I presented to Lower Hutt software engineers about emergent design and evolutionary architecture, and one of the key things is, like, software developers like to solve problems. That's basically what we do. And so if a problem's too simple, we'll complicate it. And if it's complicated, then we'll make it complex.
Yes.
Because we want the challenge of solving it into something. And so we tend to gold plate things. It's our natural tendency to gold plate.
This explains a lot.
And so if you give people time to do that, that's absolutely what they will do. If you don't give them time to do that, and you build
more slides, Paul,
and you build the simplest thing possible.
Yes.
To start with, you've got a couple of things. One, you're doing just enough to meet your current objective and satisfy, i.e., you're not spending the product owner or the budget. You're not burning the budget. And secondly, you've got a simple enough architecture that as the real design starts to emerge, you can build on it and change it and refactor it to.
So it's important to remember that you can iterate.
Yeah.
Right, rather than, as you say, gold plating straight away. It's
Yeah.
kind of hard to strip it out later.
Yeah, that's right.
You know.
But often, so the activity in a sort of old, the waterfall way of doing things, kind of, there's like a simmer of activity going on that would suddenly get up to about, just as the project needed to be completed, a boil,
yeah,
and then the bang.
It's that sort of unrealistic idea that is going to come together at the end, you know, because that's what all the graphs show, that, and then it all comes together. But having worked on those type of projects, we get to here and it's like, it doesn't just magically come together, does it?
No.
It might seem like it does. Then you get to the UAT period and you realise that actually it's full of holes.
Yeah, that's right. And for me, that Scrum team that dropped Scrum and decided they could just flow the work through, they ended up, I think, to a certain extent, going off on that kind of journey. Even though they were still operating to user stories and so on, they weren't working to a common goal. They didn't have a common vision. They weren't aligned as a team. They were
Well, they're siloed again.
Yeah, that's right.
And the advantages of working with a team is having the support of all those people in their thinking.
That's right.
And reaching consensus, isn't it?
Making those, exactly. Yeah, that's how I think that's how an agile architecture evolves. Is you've got a group of experts making decisions together, rather than disparate bunch of experts making independent decisions.
Yeah, well, and that is when you end up with a bit of a mess, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was an interesting blog post, and I think the person Tom Hallett that wrote it, his honesty is much appreciated.
Yeah, well, that's where you learn so much about agile, really, where you just listen to people telling their real stories, whether they're a war story or a massive success story.
Good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, it's all stuff you can learn from.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think while the team here that decided they were ready to drop Scrum were because they got to the point where they sized. All of their stories were of a consistent size. What started the conversation was they felt like they didn't need to size stories any longer, and then that led to a further conversation about why do we need Scrum? We can just we're agile, and
so they didn't drop Scrum in the end, though.
They didn't drop Scrum because we had a conversation around understanding of the agile principles and the reason why story sizing is so important. It starts a conversation.
That's right. It's all about the conversation.
It's all about the conversation, and so the team are working really well together. And yes, they end up playing. Basically, their planning poker has turned into a game of Snap because they hardly ever disagree on
description.
Yeah.
But tell me, that you said sizing all the stories a similar size or the same size. Is that still happening?
They're basically within the range of 1 to a 3.
Yeah.
The product owner's also been engaged and educated around the fact that smaller stories flow through the system faster.
So it sounds like they're kind of nailing their stories now.
Yeah, they are.
In terms of making them an appropriate size.
Yeah.
And that's why they're ending up in the 1 to 3 range.
Yeah, but there's still the odd case where a story comes in and it's much bigger than a 3, and then still and so planning poker.
Yeah, well, it helps identify that, and
exactly.
then it's a conversation about whether they can potentially split it.
Break it down. Yeah, break it down.
That's interesting.
Okay.
Cool.
I think that's all we have time for today.
I think so.
Yeah. So thanks very much for watching, and we'll be back in 2 weeks' time.
Yep.
And if there's any topics or anything anybody would like us to discuss on the board, please either mention them on YouTube comments or on live stream, or email them to info@boost.co.nz. We'd love to hear what you'd like us to talk about. We absolutely will discuss them on the next show if you send them in.
Yep, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.